My name is Kayona, a 30-year-old housewife. 2 years ago, I married my husband Naoki, who is 6 years older than me, and since then, we've been living in his parents' home. In this house, we live with Robert and Barbara. Both are in their 60s, and thankfully they're in good health and full of energy. Being energetic is generally a good thing, but Barbara loves to go out and have fun. I don't know if it started when I moved in or if it's always been this way, but she hardly does any housework. She was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom since she never worked, but she'd say, "Okay, Yona, dinner isn't ready yet. You had plenty of time, didn't you?" She'd push the chores onto me, go out to play, and if things weren't done when she came back, she'd make snide remarks. I've been dealing with this, trying to keep my frustration in check. "Mother-in-law, I'm sorry, but I did tell you before you left that I might not finish all this." "Huh? What are you complaining about? It's only natural to do this much, right? This is why I have trouble with your millennial generation. I wish you'd learned from Naoki." If it were just the snide remarks, I could handle it, but Barbara always brags about Naoki. Especially since Naoki works for a large company, which seems to be a great source of pride for Barbara. "Naoki works so hard every day, but his wife is a failure." That was Barbara's favorite phrase. As for my husband, he didn't show any signs of standing up for me. At dinner, Barbara would start complaining about me. "Today, Kayona did this." And all my husband would do was respond with a disinterested, "Oh, really?" When we first met, I thought he was mature because he was older, but now it's different. It seems like he thinks of me as a convenient housemaid. Even when I'm doing housework late into the night, he doesn't say a word to me. Instead, he throws laundry at me, aiming for my face, saying, "Hey, this too." I regret marrying such a person. Whether it's a way to vent his work stress or something else, my husband has changed dramatically since we got married. Our first anniversary, he bought a cake, but then he threw a pie in my face, laughing. You wouldn't think he's a 36-year-old man. However, there's a glimmer of hope in this life. That's the presence of my father-in-law, Robert. Robert is a very calm person, always saying, "Thank you, Kayona," and "Is there anything difficult? I'll help you." The only person who treats me kindly in this house is Robert. Since I quit my job when I got married, he's the only person I can chat with. I've come to adore Robert like a real father. However, Robert works as a senior staff member at the company he used to work for, so he's not home during the day. The reality is that Robert spends little time at home, and I spend a lot of time alone with Barbara. When I'm talking to Robert, Barbara doesn't say anything. But it seems she doesn't like it, and her attitude has gotten worse. "Don't make eyes at your father-in-law. Just because Naoki doesn't pay attention to you, you're going to go after his father? It's disgusting." She started saying things like that. Of course, she would say these things where Robert couldn't hear. I pushed back against this. "That's not true at all." "Oh my, did I hit a nerve? You're even raising your voice. How unbecoming." No matter what I say, she has a comeback. Our conversations are always like this, never really connecting. I talked to my husband about this. I thought he would understand that this was just Barbara's delusion, but he just laughed and said, "So, you're even into men over 60. You're really open-minded." I knew it was hopeless. I had no expectations that my husband would do anything about the housework or Barbara's bullying, but I never expected him to say something like this. It was a huge shock. I started to feel like I didn't belong in this house. One summer day, Barbara said to me, "I'm thinking of going on a family trip when Naoki gets his summer vacation." I thought, here she goes again, always wanting to go out. But then she said, "You're coming too, right, Kayona?" I didn't expect to be invited. I thought they would go without me. "Me too? Don't you want to?" "No, it's not that." I found it suspicious. What does Barbara want to do inviting me? I was suspicious, but I didn't know what she would say if I refused. That night, my husband asked me again, "You're going on the trip, right?" "Yeah, I was invited." When I answered, my husband burst out laughing for some reason. "What's so funny?" "Nothing, really." Something was definitely off and my anxiety grew. On the day of the trip, we headed out to our destination with my husband driving. Robert was going to join us later because of work. So it was just me, my husband, and Barbara in the car. My husband was driving. Barbara was in the passenger seat and I was in the back seat. I could only catch glimpses of their expressions, which made me anxious. "Keona, you withdrew some money for the trip, right?" Barbara asked me. "Yes, a few $100s. "That's good." Barbara seemed to be smirking when she heard this. After driving for a while, I noticed that we had passed the sign for the inn where we were supposed to stay. "Didn't we just pass the inn?" I asked. "There's a tourist spot ahead. We'll check in after we see it," my husband answered. He was half smiling, clearly unable to hide something strange. As we drove further from the inn, the surrounding area became greener. I sighed quietly, making sure the two of them didn't hear me, and then we arrived at a dam. To be honest, it wasn't a big dam, and there weren't many people around. It was far from a tourist spot. "Come on, let's get out of the car," Barbara urged. "Don't leave any belongings in the car, it could be dangerous," my husband added, and I did as they said. I was about to get out of the car, but Barbara and my husband were saying things like, "Oh, I should take off my jewelry just in case." "Oops, I still have something in my pocket," pretending to be busy and not getting out of the car. I got out of the car and closed the door. Then I heard the sound of the lock clicking. My husband cracked the driver's and passenger's windows slightly open. My husband was laughing uproariously. "Okay, Ona, what are you doing getting out here? Are you planning to stay here tonight?" I was furious at Barbara, but I held it in. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "You got out on your own, didn't you?" My husband was laughing so hard he was holding his stomach. My wallet and cell phone were all in the car. Everything had gone according to Barbara and my husband's plan. "Well, Keona, enjoy yourself," Barbara said with a smirk. "Eat some grass and sleep outside." My husband, holding my wallet and flipping through it, closed the window. His laughter faded away, and then my husband and Barbara drove off. "Well, they're a handful, and it's hot," I muttered. It was the height of summer, and I was at risk of dehydration, but I wasn't panicking at all. An hour later, "Why are you here?" My husband was shocked to see me. Yes, I was in the lobby of the inn where we were supposed to stay. "Are you a ghost? Did something happen at the dam?" Barbara looked like she was about to faint. I thought about pretending to be a ghost, but decided against it. "I'm not a ghost, and I'm staying here tonight." I showed them the key to my room. By the way, I had already left my luggage in the room. My husband, who couldn't understand the situation, was losing his cool. He seemed to think I had taken the key to their room without permission. "What are you doing? Give it back now!" He tried to snatch the key from me roughly. At that moment, a man appeared and grabbed my husband's hand. "Sir, please refrain from causing a disturbance here." He was about the same age as Robert, but he had a sturdy physique and was taller, making him seem more reliable than my middle-aged, slightly overweight husband. "Who are you? Are you staff here? Do you think it's okay to do this to a guest?" "Exactly why we'll sue you for assault." Barbara also joined in, yelling at the man who had intervened. "I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. I am the owner of this inn." The man introduced himself politely. Hearing that he was the owner, my husband quickly withdrew his hand. "Actually, I knew this owner. When I was in college, I came to this area on a trip with my friends during the summer vacation. I remember it was really hot that day. We didn't have much money at the time, so we were walking to our accommodation, complaining about the heat. We didn't know the area, and none of us, including me, were good at reading maps. As a result, we got lost and ended up in a place with few people. There, a girl was collapsed on the side of the road. That girl was Mary, the owner's daughter. We quickly called an ambulance and took care of her until it arrived. The next day, the owner came to the small inn where we were staying and thanked us profusely, saying, "You saved my daughter's life. Thank you so much." He also said, "We run an inn too, so we'd like to invite you next time you come. Of course, you don't have to pay." Since then, my family and I have visited the inn several times. That's why I knew the owner of this inn. The owner, who was reprimanding my husband and Barbara, was polite and courteous, but I could tell he was very angry. In fact, both the owner and I knew about this low-level plan of Barbara and my husband from the beginning. I noticed their plan 2 weeks ago. I thought it was suspicious that they invited me on a trip, so I set up a voice recorder in the living room. I targeted the times when my husband and Barbara were alone, such as when I was taking a bath or doing laundry, and their plan came to light. How about we leave Keona somewhere? That would be hilarious. Oh, how about here? There's a gym about an hour's drive from the inn. I was shocked when I heard it. I immediately called the inn and consulted with the owner. I told him everything about the situation I was now in and what was planned for the future. The owner was very angry. His own daughter had once collapsed in the blazing sun, so he was even more upset. And today, the owner, who knew the situation in advance, had arranged for my pickup. After waiting for my husband and Barbara's car to leave, he had me ride in the inn's shuttle. By the way, the driver was Mary from that time. I got my license. Let's go for a drive next time. We're driving right now. Oh, great. We chatted happily, bought some local specialty ice cream on the way, and arrived at the inn. I knew about the plan and that a pickup was coming, but I was still scared. For Mary, this area was like her backyard. She knew a shortcut, so we arrived at the inn several tens of minutes earlier than my husband and Barbara. You mentioned suing earlier, ma'am. The owner looked at Barbara with stern eyes. Yes, I did. It's outrageous to be accused of the opposite. I'm sorry, but you're not our guests. What? Don't mess with us. My husband and Barbara both lost their tempers. Your and your mother's reservations have been canceled, I added. You! Who do you think you are? My husband was about to lose his temper again, so the owner restrained him. Keona did nothing wrong. We, the inn, canceled your reservations. What do you mean? If you left a woman alone at the dam in the mountains after stealing her wallet, wouldn't you be the perpetrators of a crime? We can't allow such people to stay at our inn. We also call the police. At this, my husband and mother-in-law became even more furious. What are you talking about? This is no joke. Don't you think you can get away with this? I work at our company, this little inn in the mountains. Just then, Robert arrived late. Hey, what's going on here? Sensing the tense atmosphere, Robert looked around at everyone and asked, What's going on here? These inn people are weird. Let's stay somewhere else. They're incredibly rude. Barbara and my husband appealed to Robert. Rather than listening to the agitated pair, Robert started asking me and the owner about the situation. And when he heard what had happened, he was furious. You idiots! It was the first time I had seen Robert yell. How embarrassing! I can't believe we're from the same family. You two, get out of here now! My husband and mother-in-law were taken aback by Robert's outburst. Get out? Where to? Another inn? Barbara said something so stupid that he added, From here and from home. Wait a minute, that's not possible, Dad, my husband said with a wry smile, but Robert was firm. You're disowned. Get out now. Don't make me say it again. He pushed my husband away. Then, the police really did show up, and my husband and Barbara turned pale. The owner and I explained the situation to the officer. I also had a voice recorder, so I played back the conversation for them. My husband and Barbara started crying, but Robert quickly said, Quiet down, you're disturbing the inn. Officer, please take them away. It's not like that, officer. We didn't think it would be such a big deal. It was just a prank, my husband and Barbara said, but the officer's expressions changed. A prank? Are you serious? Don't you think that your little prank could cost someone their life, especially your own wife? They were scolded harshly. They weren't arrested because it was a family dispute, but Barbara and my husband were pale throughout. This isn't over. Keona's feelings will determine your future, understand? With those final words, my husband and Barbara, still pale, went home. Afterwards, Robert seemed apologetic the whole time. He kept repeating, I'm really sorry. I can't apologize enough for not noticing the unpleasant experiences I had been having and for the terrible ordeal I went through today. He also deeply apologized to the owner of the inn, saying, I'm sorry for this. Despite being in a position where we always receive your hospitality, we caused such trouble. Actually, this owner is a businessman who runs several other companies and is also a client of the company where Robert works. Without knowing any of this, my husband had boasted, I work for a big company. I'm glad I was able to punish my husband and Barbara, but it's also very scary to think what would have happened if I hadn't known about their plan in advance. I prayed that being scolded by the police would make them realize the gravity of the situation. After returning from the inn, I divorced my husband, of course. I also demanded a hefty alimony. I hope they reflect on their actions and don't do the same thing to anyone else in the future. By the way, I heard that Robert and Barbara also got divorced. Robert cut ties with my ex-husband and kicked him out of the house. My ex-husband was advised to resign due to the incident. Apparently, his workplace bullying had already been a problem. Just as he had been nasty to me, he had been harsh to his juniors and colleagues, and it seems that the HR department was planning to take action anyway. I'm disappointed in myself for marrying such a person. My ex-husband, who lost his job, seems to have been working hard to find another one, but it's not going well. He should be in a managerial position given his age, but he doesn't have that track record at his previous company, and he can't clearly explain why he left. Barbara was kicked out by Robert and seems to have turned to relatives at her parents' home. But she's rumored to be a spendthrift who loves to travel. They fear she'll deplete their savings if she comes to live with them. I think she should get a part-time job or something since she's still in good health. I also left my in-laws' house and I'm living alone nearby. I'm still in good terms with Robert, and sometimes I consult with him about work problems. And I, who was a stay-at-home mom, started a new life. When I was job hunting, I was approached. "Kayuna, would you like to work at my company?" It was from the owner. He was very concerned about what happened to me afterwards. He seemed to be looking for a position in his company where I could work. I was happy to accept. I was very grateful. Thank you so much for doing all this for me. No, we're the ones who should be grateful. We can't thank you enough. I feel like I've already repaid the favor from that time and need to give back the change. The company he introduced me to is a reputable company that meets labor conditions. It was a surprise on top of a surprise. By the way, it's in the same industry as the big company my ex-husband was boasting about, but its capital is 5 times larger. Everyone working there is also very nice. I'm having more fulfilling and enjoyable days than when I was struggling with my married life.